This morning. I'm glad that I'm coming after that because really what we're here to talk about is what comes after Candace talked about this morning. And this is, what I'm going to talk about today is definitely more granular. You know, the brand has been built, we've got a marketing strategy, and when that marketing strategy gets implemented and we get to the point of choosing how we're going to spend our dollars, really the question then becomes how can we be the best stewards of the money as possible, and how can we demonstrate to the C-suite not only a thought process, but hopefully a return on investment. So I think from that sense, sort of getting that, you know, what she talked about this morning on the table makes a tremendous amount of sense, and this is now down to a little bit more of the granular tactical stuff. As Randy had alluded to, I've been with the agency and purchased the agency with another gentleman back in 2005, and prior to that, I was a sales manager in the television business. So I'm speaking to you as somebody who sat on the other side of the desk, somebody most of you potentially have negotiated with, certainly your agencies have negotiated with, and all a great deal of my friends and colleagues still participate in what I would call sort of the traditional media business. So the information that I'm going to share with you today, a lot of it comes from there. The presentation that I'm giving, just so you guys are aware, is everybody who here has used Prezi before? It's a great software as a service, sort of a SaaS model for presentations, different than Keynote and PowerPoint. I've chosen to download this to my desktop to deliver it because I didn't want to be reliant on the Abby's Wi-Fi system. But it's a cloud-based system that you can literally just show up at any place and give your presentation. So hopefully you'll enjoy that, and it's kind of fun to work with. One last thing to kind of bring up is when we talk at our firm and a lot of firms today, when we talk about engagement or media strategies, we talk about them in three distinct buckets: owned media, earned media, and paid media. And owned media are those channels, whether our social properties or our own websites or our databases, that we own as a system that we can utilize whenever we see fit, and we sort of have control over how those operate. Earned media is that traditional PR along with social strategies that we may employ as a system. And finally, paid is sort of the easiest to understand, but it's also a very dynamic part of the media mix today. And paid media is that place where we choose to purchase inventory or space or spots or whatever you want to call it, to get our message into somebody else's content stream. So those content streams can be TV, radio, print, but more and more they're becoming interactive. So what I've got is I've got a tremendous amount of information. There's a lot of percentages. We have chosen to sort of tell a story here versus just talk in terms of this TV's up 4% or down 2%. We've kind of crafted it in a story to make it slightly more entertaining, hopefully, for everybody. Don't get caught up if it says TV's at 14% and you say, I've got a source that says it's at 15%. I don't think that's really the important part. I think the important part is directionally, where are we headed and who's sort of winning in this new modern landscape and who's at whose expense. So, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to a family, the Johnsons, and they live in Champaign, Illinois. The location is sort of irrelevant. It's only relevant to this regard. Depending on whether the size of community that your hospital operates in, you may or may not have access to some of these purchasable mediums. So you may or may not have access to purchasing some online ad networks. You may or may not have access in some of the cable systems. Again, I could answer those questions for you later, but that really becomes more of a function of, are you in Chicago, Illinois, or are you in Fontana? So this is our family. Mom and dad on the left, their daughter Jennifer, who is a nurse at a hospital, Sarah, who's away at college, Brian, their son, and Grandma. And we're going to go through a typical day for the Johnsons, kind of give you a sense of where they intersect with media, and at the end of each of the what I'll call day parts, we'll talk about media habits in each of those day parts. So this is Dad, and he's reliant primarily in the morning when he wakes up on computers, tablets, television. This is Mom. She too is familiar with all of those things. Her daughter is Jennifer, obviously gets a tremendous amount of information from all those sources. as well as her iPod. Her daughter, who is away at college, you could put this as a high school age, certainly has tablets, has mobile, and has computer and an iPod. And then their son, Brian, has access to a lot of that stuff, but also you'll see an icon there for some gaming, which is a growing part, particularly for the young male demographic, of how they get content, how they access content, and the content that they utilize. Grandma, not nearly as progressive as her, as the younger counterparts, but she too is becoming more and more familiar with interactive options that she may have. So we're going to start off talking 6 to 9A and what exactly do they do, and kind of, again, try to give you a little slice of life for the Johnsons. When Grandma wakes up, the alarm clock is a rooster, okay? So she doesn't have any devices that she is relying on for her daily wake up. She probably reads the newspaper, turns on the television set, and if she's doing anything in the online arena, it's probably with friends and family in a social strata. For Mom and Dad, the alarm clock is still an alarm clock, and that is what wakes them up. Dad sits down and reads the paper. Mom turns on the television. It is snowing in Champaign, Illinois today, and she's trying to figure out if Brian has school. Mom is Brian's alarm clock. He will not get up in her absence. He too is very interested in knowing if it's going to snow today, but instead of relying on his mother, he's turned to his friends and he's turned to Twitter, and he knows before she does that school has been canceled for the day, so it is time to go sledding. Jennifer's waking up her child, and she is immediately turning to her iPad. More and more people, I think, again, as consumers and users, we all recognize this. These tablets they're so mobile, they're so easy to use that they are sitting by your bed at night when you go to sleep and when you wake up in the morning, and it is oftentimes the first thing that we choose. And when we get into some of the pie charts here, you'll see sort of the utilization of tablets. Away at college, Sarah's waking up with her friends on Facebook and planning her day accordingly. So each day part we're going to go through, you're going to see a series, a little story like that, and then a series of icons. And at the end of each of the day parts, we're going to go through and sort of talk about what utilization is being done. And these, a lot of these icons will be fairly self-explanatory. On the left will be online icons for news and information. So those would be probably your local newspaper sites, other places, CNN, foxnews.com, that you're seeking out information. Facebook will represent sort of social chatter, and then entertainment pages with that laughing icon on the bottom. Off to the right-hand side is offline activities like newspapers, console games, TV, personal media players, music that is not on the radio, and music and movies that are on TV sets. So it's very interesting when we sit down and start talking to clients and they say, well, I'm going to create a TV spot. I think what they're saying today really is, I'm going to create video to help me tell a story, and then I'm going to deliver that video in a number of different ways. I might edit that to be a 30-second television set. That might be YouTube content. That may be we're buying inventory on Hulu or Netflix, but it's not nearly the same as just saying I'm buying a 30-second TV spot. So top media usage for this age group, you're going to see along the top, you're going to have their age ranges, and then sort of scrolling down from each of them, a percentage of their utilization by day part, by age range. So on the far left-hand side, again, we're talking 6 to 9 a.m. For 47 to 65-year-olds, you're going to see that radio is still very prevalent part. News and information online is 26%. What I find interesting about that is not just that it outpaces newspaper, but it outpaces television as well. As you start to slide down that scale, there will be a lot of things that as we go from morning to noon to later afternoon, will become pretty intuitive. And you're going to start to see clearly the younger the demographic is, the more reliant they are on what we would probably term non-traditional forms of media. So the 30 to 46-year-olds, radio is still a very important part to them. 18 to 29-year-olds, radio is an important part to them. You'll start to see the headphones enter in here for 13 to 17. and those that are 11 and under, and that is music that they are listening to music, but that music is not being delivered via terrestrial radio. This is back to one of my earlier points about what you may or may not have ability to purchase. In Kansas City, we can now start to purchase Pandora for our clients, and Pandora is the #1 radio station in Kansas City at this point. I'm not in the bigger markets. They've been able to purchase Pandora for some time. If we get down to Champaign, Illinois, my sense would be is local insertion is not necessarily an option there at that point, but it will be an option. It'll be an option in the future. Streaming music is an interesting business in and of itself. Nobody has figured out how to monetize it effectively yet. Pandora, Songza, they are all still operating in a negative revenue situation. This is really sort of their first opportunity. We've just started utilizing it for clients. We've utilized it for one client. I can't really give you tremendous feedback yet to say Pandora's been great or not, but those options again are coming to your market. Is everybody here from? Sorry, I should stop. Is everybody familiar with Pandora? Okay, Songza is basically the same thing. All of them are trying to figure out how do we monetize this space. So in each of the day parts, we'll dive a little bit deeper in terms of any single medium and sort of where they stand today. And for newspaper, you'll see, and these statistics are not extremely historic. We're talking from 2010 to 2012. Newspaper has already lost an additional 2.5% of their market share. And you'll see the people's interaction with newspaper, again, very intuitive here, is the younger that they are, the less that they are interacting with local print. You're seeing in a lot of markets, Detroit, Seattle, where they're down to 2 or 3 days. I think it's a matter of time until most newspapers are down to a couple of days a week. So I don't think that's surprising news to anybody. I think the thing that I would sort of keep in mind in your local marketplace is trying to have that understanding of how the paper is doing. Clearly, it changes your negotiation posture with any individual print organization. Oops, sorry. Time spent with print, again, continues to erode. Even from 2009 down to 2012, people's percentage of time has been cut again in a third. And this is specifically with the print edition of the paper. That is not to suggest that any individual newspaper's website would be a corollary. In fact, a lot of those are still growing and growing rather quickly. Moving on to 9 to 5, which as a day part, for used to be a very strong day part for television. It really has eroded. I think you start to, how you know that and how that sort of manifests itself is I think back to my childhood and the amount of high quality, high production soap operas that were on. They're gone. The networks just can no longer afford to put that kind of content on during the middle of the day. So Dad is at work. He's probably interacting, the only mediums that he's probably interacting with is his computer at work. He might be checking a sports score or sports standings, maybe an article. I don't know if anybody here is guilty of that, but I have done it on occasion. Mom is at home, and she is checking her email. Brian is back from sledding. That didn't last long, and he is gaming with his friends. Obviously, I think, if you have not seen, I think it was a Grand Theft Auto 5 came out last week. It was... the production budget on that was just enormous, and the pre-sale on it actually has already covered their costs on that thing. So you're seeing these are Hollywood movies or more expensive than Hollywood movies being produced for your gaming console, and they are making money, just doing tremendously well. I think one of the things that's interesting to me as a father of a 10-year-old is not just that he enjoys gaming, but that he games with his friends and he games with other people that he has never met, never seen before. Which is scary, frankly, to a large degree, but certainly fascinating as marketers and media people. At the hospital, Jennifer may have access to, probably not access to the internet on her work computer, but might be able to do that versus via some mobile technology. Sarah's at college. She's got access to anything she wants, so she's twittering with her friends on Facebook while she's sitting in class. If you haven't had a chance to teach a class lately. I did one at KU 2 weeks ago. People are on their phones, texting. It's extremely distracting. And I talked to the professor, and he said it's an everyday occurrence. So kind of scary. Grandma, he's got a pet hippo in the front yard, and she is on her computer exchanging emails and recipes with friends. Dad is getting ready to come home, and when he comes home, he's got a series of options. We've been fortunate enough to do some work with the Kansas Department of Transportation, and very interesting. One of the most interesting things that came out of it was all the state and federal agencies, and they're working with the manufacturers of cars, because when we use the term distracted driving, I think most people are talking in terms of texting, but the reality is I just leased a new car. I have free Sirius. I can plug in computer game console to my car. I can obviously plug in my iPod. The number of distractions that exist in my car, absent of texting, is overwhelming. I have, I have 2 bands of FM, a band of AM. Via my free Sirius trial, I think there's 300 channels there, and then whatever I've got on my iPod. So distracted driving is not just texting. And Dad obviously has the opportunity to listen to terrestrial radio coming home. Sirius, if he wants to plug his computer in, he's got Songza, he's got Pandora, he's got any variety of music that he wants. Clearly leads to fragmentation and makes our jobs a little bit harder. Jennifer's got the same thing, so she can either listen on her phone or listen to Pandora as she is driving home as well. So day part usage, again, you're looking at far left-hand side, 47 to 65-year-olds, sliding and just getting younger and younger. And these are mediums that they're using sort of by day part. This is the afternoon. Even what I find interesting is even for our oldest, this isn't 65 plus, but for the 45 to 65-year-olds, just the amount of time that they're spending online, not to say that they're not spending time with radio, certainly spending time with some television, and certainly spending time with entertainment sites online. Again, as you get younger and younger, first of all, you'll see sort of the percentage of reach gets lower and lower because they don't have as much access to media during that day part as they will later in the day when they get home from school. But for those who do have access, utilization is really around electronic devices, and a lot of times electronic devices that don't allow us to have insertion capabilities. For that sweet spot of people that we're probably looking for, primarily 30 to 46 years of age, you're going to see a tremendous amount of online usage and social usage. Radio trends, again, much like their sort of brethren in the newspaper world, they're declining. They're not declining nearly as rapidly. I will tell you their revenue streams are not declining as rapidly either. One of the things that I think people dismiss when they talk about the decline of newspaper is not the decline of ad space in display advertising, but if you put yourself as a manager of a newspaper and go to 1990 to today, there is no automotive classified advertising section anymore. There is no real estate classified section anymore, and there is no longer a help wanted classified section. Those 3 sections of the paper made up about 40% of their revenue. So they've seen decline in display ads. People here represented don't spend what they used to spend in newspapers, but really the financial death knell was the loss of all the classified advertising that has gone to Craigslist, eBay, Cars.com, you name it, any type of online category killer, real estate. I mean, who here, if anybody's bought a house recently, I mean, real estate shopping is unbelievable online. The amount of content that you can get, how specific you can get, everything, so much more about a house before you ever walk in. You just don't need the newspaper to do it. Time spent with radio, again, continues to decline, and you'll see sort of the high water mark is still those between the ages of 25 and 64 years of age. The younger you get, the less time you're spending with, again, this is terrestrial radio. I've got kids who fall squarely in the 13 to 17 year range. They listen to a tremendous amount of music. Unless they're in the car, they do not listen to terrestrial radio. They're listening to, again, Songza, Spotify, Pandora, or their own iTunes accounts. So you'll see 38% listen to audio content on digital devices weekly. That's expected to double by 2015. So really just a tremendous amount of opportunity. The hard part for us as marketers is where and how do we intersect with that kind of content. And then media reach for the internet obviously continues to grow, 68% in 2010, up to 73% now. I look at these statistics and I always think, who are the other 25%? I mean, so many people have internet access today. And then time spent with the internet actually has sort of flattened out over the last few years. There's a number of sources that you could go to that you'll see the same type of information, where our broadband has exploded so quickly, but people's utilization and time spent with it is not growing sort of in a corollary on that. But still, and again, one of the other things I find interesting is is you look at the hours spent for 25 to 54 years of age, that's 3 hours a day. What I find fascinating about that is if somebody would have said to you 10 years ago, hey, I need you to carve out 3 hours of your life to surf the internet, people would have said, I can't do it, I can't find it. But people have found the time to do it. And they have found it because a lot of times they are co-using media, that they are on a mobile device, they're on a tablet, they're watching television at the same time. So there's a lot of co-utilization of these media options. Again, for online seniors, those 65 plus, really, I would say they're staggering numbers, but I think for most of us, we see this in our daily lives. 90% use email, 82% use search engines, 70% seek health care information out. Again, we could debate whether that's 72% or 75%. It doesn't really matter. I think the point is that we need to be there providing content even to our oldest patients. Moving on to 5 to 8, which in the TV world is called either early news or access. We're back at home. Mom's got Entertainment Tonight on. Dad is watching some breaking news. Bobby is still playing video games. This is a problem. Jennifer's with her friends, tweeting back and forth, Facebook messaging Mom. This is an incredibly modern phenomenon. I now have kids on Facebook. I'm friends with them. Frankly, the thing that I find most interesting is how infrequently they're using Facebook as a medium anymore. Twitter and Instagram have really replaced Facebook for them. And Jennifer's making dinner for the family, and then she's going to settle in and she's going to watch some Netflix. She's either going to watch Netflix via maybe an Apple connection to her television set. She's going to watch Netflix on a mobile device. Again, utilization of content is still there. When she used to sit down and watch a movie, we had access. We could run advertising during that movie. We don't have access really to her anymore. So changes a little bit of the way that we can distribute our own content. Grandma's watching Gunsmoke. It's still on. Who knew? And Grandma has a Facebook relationship with her teenage daughter. Again, there's a lot of statistics to sort of back this up, but intergenerational Facebook relationships are sort of everywhere. I think that kids used to be panicked at the idea of being friends with their parents or their grandparents on Facebook, and now you really see that intergenerational social media usage, which is great, I think. So again, just kind of following left to right from the oldest to the youngest. Again, this is in that 5 to 8, so post dinner, early evening type of utilization. You're still going to see there's a tremendous amount of need and use for TV. This early morning and this time period have still really held some pretty good ratings for television stations. A lot of online usage, a lot of social usage. When you get down to those younger members of our community, gaming is roughly half, more than social media, more than listening to music, about half of what they're doing during that time period. Television usage, again, like radio, like newspaper, continues to decline, not nearly at the pace that newspaper has declined, and they too, from a revenue perspective, have suffered, but not suffered nearly as much as their newspaper brethren have. As you would expect, television usage continues, is strongest at the highest ends of any demographic. That's not to say that it's poor at younger demographics. This too is a place, when we say TV, that we could really start to head down a rabbit hole here, because You've also got, in probably a lot of your communities, cable is obviously a huge part of what people are watching on a nightly basis. So when you're planning your TV budget or your TV spending, clearly a percentage of it's going to go to broadcast. Some percentage of that is going to go to cable. And if we could sort of stop there, that would be the end of the confusing. But it goes further now because take the Kansas City market. Your cable providers, you now have Time Warner, AT&T, and Google Fiber. So now when I say, okay, I'm going to spend 50% of my budget in cable, well, which cable systems are you going to purchase? So it continues to, make the pie confusing, make the pie smaller, and make the decision making for us as marketers more and more difficult. And by the way, Google Fiber, who's familiar with Google Fiber? Unbelievable. Came into Kansas City last year, just eating up market share at an incredible pace. What they do is they advertise in the Kansas City community. You had to go to a Google website and sign up a year in advance. And then depending on what neighborhoods wanted it the most, they would come in and they would overbuild into that marketplace. The speed is just ridiculously stronger than what the local cable providers have offered. A lot of people think Google is not serious about becoming a cable player, that really all they've been trying to do is goose the rest of the industry to get faster internet connections. I don't know if that's true or if Google really is serious about building it out. But, and I don't know if this will make people jealous or not, let's say that the average Time Warner bill in Kansas City was $200 for your TV, your internet, and your phone. Google came in and it's about $75 a month. It's unbelievable, and they've just gobbled up a ton of market share. I'm sure those bills will grow in time, but you're looking at internet connections that are 50 times faster than what you're getting from Time Warner and probably from most standard cable companies. So it's confusing, even when you say I'm going to buy TV. It's just becoming continually more confusing. Time spent with television again continues to erode. 45% back in 2009 to 42% in 2012. And then the percentage of television users, and again, this is another difficult element for marketing departments to deal with when we start talking about the distribution of our content and our advertising messages. You're going to see this goes from 2004 to 2012. The gray line represents live television. The white line represents recorded television. And the purple is video games, and that lighter purple is streaming video. Time-shifted television is what they call it. Basically, it's DVRing, is continuing to grow at really an unbelievable pace. The only thing that seems to be sort of immune from that is live sporting events and live news. Again, intuitively, if I were to ask people to raise their hands and said, who here has time-shifted their television? I think everybody has. Record a show, burn through it. I don't have to watch the commercials. And if the content's not right at 7 o'clock at evening, then I can turn it on at 9 o'clock at night. We're all guilty of it. Plug in your Modern Family, and there's queued up 6 episodes of Modern Family for you a week later. It really is, it's a real threat to the television business because marketers are more and more asking the question, well, what's the value of my TV spend if the commercials don't ever get seen? Again, so and this is obviously an eye chart, and all this stuff is available to you guys, so you don't have to study it. But what are they doing when they're watching television? Are they on a traditional TV? Are they watching time-shifted TV? Are they using DVDs, Blu-rays, game consoles? Are they using the internet on a computer, watching video on the internet? Again, for those who have younger kids, the amount of video on the internet, for my kids, it outpaces what they watch on regular television between self-directed YouTube videos or series that they're watching and they're just watching online. So again, the hard part for us as marketers is where do we intercede in all of this? And it's why I think that we have to turn more and more to those kind of channels that we can own ourselves, like our social media streams, our websites, things of that nature. 8 to 11 o'clock, Dad's watching news and he's doing the family budget online. Mom is Facebooking with the girls. Brian is hoping that school is canceled for tomorrow, so he can't sleep. until he gets the news via text that he does not have school tomorrow as well. He's an excited kid. Grandma and her daughter Jennifer, her granddaughter, are emailing back and forth. And top media usage, so again, this is the wheelhouse of what TV, where they really used to make their money in prime time. For our older viewers, still a significant portion of what they're doing is they are watching television. As we get younger and younger, you're going to see the TV usage go from 70% down to just under 40%. And our youngest audiences, again, not only are they relying on social channels for their entertainment, but the video that they're watching is self-directed. That video is on Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, but their desire to watch content that the networks produce continues to erode. And, you know, there's really nothing to suggest that that's going to stop anytime soon. Mobile phones, so just kind of a little touch on mobile technology, has doubled in the last 2 years as far as our time spent with that medium. Tripled in time spent, doubled in usage. From 4% in 2009 up to 12% now. I would assume if you have not gone back and looked at your hospital's sites and taken a look at the amount of traffic that is coming to that site from a mobile, which would be either a phone or a tablet, my guess is you're going to be looking at something in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% of your traffic is coming from mobile. And I think you've got a lot of questions that you need to ask yourself about that traffic that's coming in. What are their usage behaviors versus those who are coming to us on a laptop or a PC, standard desktop unit? And what are they looking for? And is our site mobile friendly? Can our site handle that? Is it giving them what they want? We could probably all take a guess at what it is they want. At that point, they're probably looking for locations and directions, driving, things of that nature. Probably very practical, fungible things. Tablet utilization is now up to 12% of people's time spent each day with media. Um, 85% of U.S. adults report having a cell phone. 75% of seniors say landline is a necessity. I point that out because that means 25% of seniors don't even think landline is a necessity anymore. I don't know how many people here have abandoned a landline. We have in our house. It's really hard to rationalize why people even have landline phones anymore. One of the things that's interesting, and this is kind of going left to right, and obviously it's a bit of an eye chart, back from 2000 to 2012. Well, it's got to be further back than that. Sorry. But it's looking at PC sales and tablet sales. And one of the things that I find most interesting here basically if you go to the far right-hand side of the graph, is that PC sales are actually declining. And if it wasn't for tablets, then the overall category would be declining. But tablets make up, of the global computer shipments in the last 3 years, tablets make up all of the growth in the category. So I think it really starts to argue for what is, if we go fast forward 4 or 5 years, what does that look like for sales and shipments? And we've got some slides here that we'll get into, because I think really we're going to have to start asking ourselves questions about, as marketers, what operating systems is our customer on? What are their, who are their email providers? How are they accessing the internet? Those questions are going to be, those are the questions for the next generation of marketers versus what radio stations do they listen to. 11 to 2 a.m., what is happening in each house? Mom and dad are asleep. Before they go to bed, mom's on the Nook, and dad is checking his email one last time. Brian is listening to his iPod. Sarah is still on Facebook. She has not done anything today. And Jennifer is getting in either some social media time or she is on Netflix. Grandma is fast asleep. This age, in this day part, again, so this constitutes what they would call late fringe in the television business. Again, you'll see a lot of television usage. You'll continue to see a lot of social usage. As you get younger, again, more reliant on their own technology, their own content, than they are on anything that's being provided to them by a third party. So just some synopsis slides, and then we can kind of get into some questions here. And again, I don't expect anybody to read this. All this is available for you, and the Prezi has been made public, so anybody can go in and look at it and grab the charts whenever they need to. But this is a great chart that gives you just a sense by medium, by age range, where utilization is right now. So television, newspaper, radio, magazine, internet, mobile, and tablet, and all the sourcing information is there as well. Time spent with media. So this last slide here was percentage reached. This is their time spent with each of those mediums. Same mediums, same age ranges, just to give you an idea of where they're spending their time on a daily basis. And again, I think so much of this would follow sort of anecdotally what you would imagine. Media trends from 2010 to 2012. So again, this follows newspaper, television, internet, radio, newspaper, mobile, magazines, and tablets. So percentages that are reached by those on a weekly basis. Time spent with those from 2009 to 2012. So again, a good resource if you're putting together a presentation for anybody at the facility, anybody in the system that you need to have data for. This is one area in a few of the slides that we just added recently, which is, as I mentioned, the conversation used to be what 10 o'clock news do they watch? I think now the question is more and more what platforms are they on? Are they iOS, which is the Apple products, or are they on an Android system? So on your far left-hand side is U.S. telephone sales in the last year. Basically over 50%, just over 50% was on an Android platform. 44% was on an iOS or an Apple platform. 5.3 represents Windows and BlackBerry, just to give you some sense of how far those folks have fallen. It's kind of a two-device or two-platform world right now. And then this is on the far right-hand side is ComScore's U.S. smartphone subscribers, and obviously follows very similar. So this is global smartphone ownership, and I show this and then make the comparison to what's happening in the U.S. 70% of global shipments are Android. So if you are Apple, you either look at this and say, wow, we've got great opportunities in other marketplaces, or you say, I think right now the narrative around Apple is this big, strong company that can really do no wrong. But globally, they've got a lot of competition, and they're either going to eat into that market share in the global market, or they are going to continue to see that erode for them. And then on the right-hand side is tablet shipments. So you'll see where the iPad certainly has a kind of a commanding lead there at 54% of tablet shipments. Android is at 43%, and then a few other folks sort of fighting it out. Home broadband versus dial-up from 2000 to 2013. If you go back all the way to 2000 and you see the percentage of dial-up versus the percentage of broadband, we've gone from 34% dial-up to 3% dial-up. I don't know who those 3% are. I assume they're extremely rural. But broadband penetration is basically at 70%. And again, the sort of the meaning of that, the downstream implications of that are pretty strong. It's just and again, if Google has some success in pushing the cable providers to up the amount of volume that's going into any individual house, I think you're just going to continue to see tremendous erosion in traditional distribution models, because if you can get 3 or 4 or 5 different television shows streaming at the same time in your house, then it's going to really decrease anybody's need for broadcast or for cable. I assume that these fights happen at your house, that they happen at our house, which is get off the internet. I've got something I want to get done. Google, in their fiber project, has made that a non-issue. Teen gadget ownership. Percentage of all teens owning each of the following devices. Basically 78% with cell phones, 37% with smartphones, 80% desktop or laptop, and 23% on tablets. So happening really at every age range. Sources of healthcare information. Again, this could be a good slide for you. The last time you had a health issue, did you get information, care, or support from? And this was a study of both caregivers and non-caregivers. But where did they turn for their healthcare information, whether that was online or offline or both online and offline? And again, sort of tells a story that you would sort of imagine, which is a tremendous amount of people utilizing, both caregivers and non-caregivers, utilizing online resources. So in summary, and this is something that I believe wholeheartedly. People always ask us, and they ask any of their agencies, well, which is better, TV or radio? Should I be in newspaper? And I think you're asking the wrong questions. The reality is they all have value. What your role then is to sort of determine, out of all these tools, which of these tools can best deliver my message, which of these tools is going to give me the right amount of mix of helping to build or introduce a brand or a product and service, and which of those are going to give me the fighting chance at having some ROI for the C-suite that they're going to want to see. One of all the good things that have happened with online is there are some bad things. And some of the bad things are it's very difficult for us to aggregate audiences around anything anymore. I suspect you all know this, but this was something that I was unaware of. And I was at a TED conference 2 years ago in Kansas City, and they had a guy from Google there, and he was talking about Google search and the polarizing elements of our society now, where either you are a Republican or a Democrat, you're a conservative or a liberal, and how polarized our country is. And he said, we at Google feel like unintended consequence of the power of our search engine is this polarity that exists. And again, this had never struck me before. Let's say that you're a conservative and you go to Fox News, and then 2 days later you go in and you type the Affordable Care Act. That search, those results that come up are going to agree with your point of view on the Affordable Care Act. So you're not going to see the other side of the other side of this story. And the implications, I think, for us as a society, I think we're seeing some of the manifestations of that is because those systems are so intuitive, they're so strong, and they can deliver to us exactly what we want when we want it, we don't really get exposure to other people's point of view. And so I sort of challenge you now when you go home and you start, and the same thing is true on Facebook. I mean, you're only getting served up those people that you're interested in their content, and you're proven to click on that content. And so the problem is now you're starting to not see and hear from other points of view. So they all have value. Then the trick there is to assign the right value, utilize the right tool for the right problem. And then I always view purchasing of media a lot like buying stocks. I guess you've got to rebalance your portfolio every so often and question those things that you're doing right now and whether those things make sense for the future. So I think we've got 5 or 6 minutes, and so if there's any questions that anybody has about this, I know there's a tremendous amount of information that was sort of thrown at you. There's a lot of statistics. That's why we try to do it in a little bit of a fun story form. All those are there for you to pull on if you want anything for a presentation later. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those now. Yeah, Randy.
You read these statistics or any expectation about how iRadio is going to affect Pandora?
I have not, and I just started using the iRadio option myself. For those who aren't familiar with it, on your iPhone or on your iPad, and you've got all your iTunes, they now have radio stations as an alternative. I guess what I look at is, you talk about starting a foot race with a tremendous head start. I mean, they already know that they're already on your devices. They already have some idea of your listening habits. I would assume that they're going to be a formidable player, and that these guys all can't survive. I mean, songs, Pandora, they can't survive because they've incurred all the costs of getting these content libraries, and so far they can't monetize any of it. I mean, I don't pay for Pandora. I don't have any interest in paying for Pandora, and I get frustrated when I see the ads. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see who succeeds out of all those.